Ah, the Copa América. The oldest still running continental football competition on the planet, where the entirety of South America fight amongst themselves to prove as to who is the true footballing power in the entire region. It's a fun tournament. It's so much fun that we even invite our neighbors up north and some Asian teams from time to time to join in on the fun. This was one of those years, as we got some CONCACAF involvement to go along with all of your favorites in Common Bowl. Now, while most people will make predictions and analysis videos on the 16 countries competing in this tournament, or be the biggest hater on the planet like my fellow Brazilian in Tactical Manager TV, I'm just gonna go the complete opposite route and talk as to why your country won't be winning this year's edition of the Copa América. Because yet again, out of 16 teams, we've got to follow the Highlander creed on this one.
There can be only one.
Let's get into it. This is both in alphabetical order and because you are the defending champions. It's funny how a few years can change the perception of a national team, as you all went from always sprinting away from the finish line when it came to winning trophies in the 2010s, to helping your legendary player in Lionel Messi complete the entirety of football with a Copa América win and then a World Cup shortly thereafter. Now, as a Brazilian, this absolutely wrecks me in every possible way, but hey, life is not fair. I learned that one after the whole 7-1 debacle. Anyways, with the talent you all have and the form you've been in over the past few years, you should be at least making the final of this tournament. There's absolutely no excuse for anything other than that, given that the housing king himself, Emiliano Martinez, will be in net. You have Enzo Fernandez and Alexis McAllister manning the midfield. Julian Alvarez and Lautaro Martinez have gone from strength to strength. Angel Di Maria and Lionel Messi can and will still contribute as wily veterans. In general, the expectation should be for you to make the finals and give the Inter Miami fans a chance to see Lionel Messi actually play a game. But now, you walk into this tournament as the defending champions, and the last time you were in this position was 1995, where you then proceeded to the bed in the quarterfinals and not even make the top 4 of the tournament. Getting to the top is one thing, but it's always harder to stay on top.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Like I said, a finals appearance should happen for you all, but I wouldn't be surprised if you end up getting knocked out in the quarterfinals by Ecuador or Venezuela because you all decided to underestimate them. It is the kind of white people bullshit you're all infamous for. You are in this competition because you're a part of Common Bowl. If the continent was big enough and you actually had to qualify to be a part of this tournament, 9 times out of 10, you're not making it. Your last victory in this entire tournament was in 2015 against Ecuador, and before that, it was in the semifinals of the Copa América of 1997 against Mexico, which you were hosting. The only reason you even have a modicum of success in this competition is because you've hosted it twice, and nobody besides you in South America has figured out how to play in the altitude on a consistent basis just yet.
Our men are running from the battlefield! Shameful display!
Okay, let's reset for a second. I do have a soft spot for your manager in Antonio Carlos Zago, given that he helped my Alviverde win 2 consecutive Campeonato Paulista and Brasileirão titles in the mid-90s as a player, but as a manager, his track record just isn't all that good in recent years. In fact, you've only won 2 of all 14 games you've played this entire qualification stretch, and you're in a group that's going to make mincemeat out of you between Uruguay and the Americans alone. Marcelo Martins isn't around to help you score your goals either. Unless you manage to pull off something beyond miraculous, you're cooked. Maybe start working on an application to be part of CONCACAF instead. You might actually break into the top 6 of that god-awful confederation. Obviously, I want you to win. Realistically, I know you're going to screw this up somehow.
Ratio L, you fell off.
It's bad enough that your souls basically got drained out of you after that World Cup loss to Croatia and Qatar, and our federation was delusional enough to think we could get Carlo Ancelotti as our permanent manager this summer. The World Cup qualifications basically have been an absolute embarrassment, and even with the manager situation settled with Dorival Jr. ditching yet another job to get a bigger one before he could get fired, there's way too many factors playing against you this time. Between the roster being in transition, an inconsistent backline, the fact that Vini Jr. becomes allergic to scoring goals the moment he puts on a canary yellow kit, Neymar still recovering from his ACL tear while trying to become the Brazilian Gareth Bale on the golf course, asking a 17-year-old to be your star striker and wearing the number 9 while also not having the guts to even start him at center forward. The situation is so dire that even Ronaldinho is boycotting all matches in this Copa América just out of the sheer shame he feels every time Rafinha gets to be part of this country's starting 11. Oh, so you're saying the whole thing was a marketing campaign and that he would never actually say those things to begin with? I'm still going to choose to believe that one of his parlays for the USA-Brazil friendly was ruined, causing him to say that stuff, and it took our federation. It was a deodorant company?
This right here is bullshit!
Regardless, even with all of what I mentioned a moment ago, there's still enough high-end talent here to carry this team past the group stages. But this reeks of either a semi-final loss in heartbreaking fashion or getting to the final only to get their asses kicked by Argentina at this stage again. Oh hey, it's your debut in Copa América. Congratulations, welcome aboard. Enjoy being able to play against teams that mostly know what the hell they're doing and have done so for a while. As for your chances,
ihn oder euch oder egal, it's us against them.
I mean, I guess if you run around and press enough times, you might be able to get a surprise result against Peru or Chile. Definitely Peru at minimum. Hell, there's probably a portion of your fanbase that are getting themselves into a frenzy because you managed to draw against France during the friendlies you all managed to schedule.
Please disperse! Nothing to see here, please!
There are talented players in this Canadian roster such as Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Alistair Johnston, and Steven Eustáquio that could have some moments of brilliance for their national side during this competition. However, there is one very important thing to know about Jesse Marsch as a manager. He's a one-trick pony. One minor adjustment from opposing managers and his entire system falls over like a Jenga tower, turning games he manages into absolute disasters. Spirit and vibes cannot get you past teams with experience at this competition, and it cannot get you out of a 3rd or 4th place finish in this group, let alone carry you to a Copa América. And given that whole Canada Soccer's media and sponsorship contract thing, and how it's possible that the better Canada performs in the Copa, the more it could accelerate the Federation's path towards financial insolvency, you might want to tap out of this one early. The last time you won this whole thing was in the United States a decade ago, even though there is a certain crowd that may write you off on paper because you're not Argentina or Uruguay or even Brazil. Your squad might be aging, people might not be taking you seriously if they're looking at your entire form from qualifiers to current day, but see, I know better. I know that since 1999's Copa América, you've made it past the group stages in all editions sans for that freakish one in 2004. I know what you're capable of doing in this tournament, and now that you've got El Tigre himself managing your team, well, the Albania and France friendlies were a night and day difference from all of the Common Bowl qualification games you'd all played before his hire. Alexis Sanchez is still rather timeless, you've got dudes like Marcelino Núñez and Dario Osorio on the rise, and to me, people should take you more seriously. Although you're still going to have your challenges coming into this tournament. Can Gareca really turn you all around this quickly from the lackadaisical form you had under Eduardo Berizzo? Can the mixture of veterans and youth put a decent run of results together? Can you also get Football Manager's greatest international discovery in Ben Berreton Diaz some Rosetta Stones so that he can finally start speaking Spanish on a consistent basis? You definitely have the talent in place to at least get to the quarterfinals, but that's the ceiling at the moment. But you're not winning this thing. Let's not be delusional here. First and foremost, you're coming into this tournament with 23 games in a row without a loss, dating all the way back to February 2022. Off the top of my head, I haven't seen a Colombian team that is this good since when you guys won this competition back in 2001. Also, you have my favorite Colombian ever in Hishaj Rios playing for you all, so I do have a bit of bias to see you all do well, as long as you're not playing my beloved Brazil. In general, this roster is built to be one of the dark horses of this entire competition. The double pivot midfield with Rios and Jefferson Lerma, Luis Diaz and Johan Cordoba up front, James Rodriguez still being around, Camilo Vargas still doing his thing in net. I have no doubts that you're making it out of the group stages without any major concerns and beating whoever it is that you get in the quarterfinals. But in a tournament like this one, there's a part of me that feels that the semifinals might be where you do end up falling short, just due to the fact that your national team isn't used to making it to these high-pressure situations. Also, I'll say it if no one else will, Nestor Lorenzo is an overrated manager.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm getting cooked.
Remember, you all missed out on the 2022 FIFA World Cup for a reason during the last set of qualifiers, and a good chunk of this team was there for it. Now, you could make the final if everything goes right, but I believe that crazy unbeaten streak will come to an end at this tournament, and it will mean that you go home without a Copa América. Normally, I'd consider you all to be the 4th automatic qualifier out of CONCACAF, but the fact you all got in this tournament through a play-in game just goes to show how far you've fallen in recent years compared to the golden generation that made the quarterfinals of the 2014 World Cup. Keylor Navas as your keeper is still as good as you can ask for. Oh, not gonna lie, I thought he was at least sticking it out until the end of this one.
Well, this is awkward.
So, yeah, Joachim Bennett seems like a promising young player for your future. Manfred Ugalde isn't having a feud with your current manager and might get to show out his stuff, and oh, who am I kidding? Any hopes and dreams you had of doing anything in this tournament basically got shot down with Navas stepping away for good. You're in Group D against 2 CONMEBOL powerhouses and a Paraguay team that's capable in their own right. Anything that isn't a 4th place finish should be considered miraculous in and of itself, but the odds of that are higher than mine of getting struck by lightning, but still incredibly low altogether. Celebrate what you had with your golden generation in the past, do the best you can in the Copa América, and then figure out what comes next for your national team. If it makes you feel any better, most of us here over at CONMEBOL all have been through this kind of transition at some point or another. It's bizarre seeing you actually be a decent national side once again after growing up watching you be as big of a punching bag in CONMEBOL as Bolivia has been this entire time. None of us can say that anymore though, because your current lineup has players who just got World Cup experience a year and a half ago and almost made it out of the tough group. Additionally, you've now got players in your starting 11 that made it to Europe at the club level, such as Moises Caicedo, Jeremy Sarmiento, and Piero Hincapie. As if that kind of experience wasn't enough, your next wonder kid in Kendry Paez also has a chance to end up as one of the breakout stars in this year's tournament if given an opportunity. Overall, you have plenty of upside. Plus, it helps that you got placed in a group where you can most certainly escape the group phase, if not win the group outright. I do think that's where the buck stops for you though. There's still youth, there's still inexperience at the higher levels of this tournament, and the biggest thing here is that your current manager is Felix Sanchez. For as good of a record as he's had during this stretch of the job, did happen to lead the worst performing host nation in the history of the World Cup just a year and a half ago with Qatar.
Yeah, pain. All I know is pain.
the moment might get too big for a few of these players and more so for your manager, but you also could just surprise the absolute hell out of everyone and get past the quarterfinals again. Okay, I absolutely love the fact that you all are here and you made it without needing a play-in game like those Canadians. Your kits are most likely to be the best ones in the whole tournament, and your manager Heimir Hallgrimsson is an absolute Icelandic legend. I also learned that he's moonlighted as a dentist in his spare time through the years. Reminds me a lot of a certain somebody I know. When it comes to your team, the likes of Mikael Antonio, Bobby de Cordova Reed, and Shamar Nicholson are good players, I will give you that. But this isn't some CONCACAF tournament where you can basically crush all of these Central American countries and make it to a quarterfinal or semifinal. You all know this as well as I do, given it's your third time here. This is the Copa América. There are levels to this, and I just don't think you're on the level to be competitive here. Especially with Leon Bailey deciding to skip out on the competition entirely because the Jamaica Football Federation can't get their collective together. It once again is worth reminding you all that all of those factors combined with you being in a group with Ecuador, Venezuela, and even a down there like Mexico, the reality is that you don't have what it takes to get out of the group stages. Not even with the brand of tough defense that you play. Just take this for what it is. Really, really good experience for the kind of levels you all need to get on if you want to be a consistent power in the CONCACAF and even on the world stage over the next few years. Just, in the meantime, maybe try to figure out the whole nonsense with your footballing federation. You used to be the kings of CONCACAF, rulers with an iron fist, and now you're getting washed by the Americans, the Canadians, and even letting Jamaica and Panama give you a hard time in recent years. Add the fact that you barely beat Bolivia, got washed by Uruguay, and lost to most of Brazil's backups in the lead up to this tournament. If there was ever a time to get it together, this is it. Because you're in a group with the two sneaky good teams of the tournament in Ecuador and Venezuela, plus a Jamaica team that decides to go extra hard anytime they get you on the calendar. So to see manager Jaime Lozano shake things up with the call-ups for Copa América is a good thing. Because you do have some talented young players such as Santiago Jimenez and Edson Alvarez that deserve the limelight, and to understand the importance of wearing your colors in big tournaments. Transition isn't easy, but you cannot just rely on the likes of Memo Ochoa or Chucky Lozano forever. But any transition is a process, and when it comes to this competition, well, just don't be too surprised if Ecuador and Venezuela are too much for you to handle, and you end up being El Tri in your group. Also, your dumb little chant anytime an opposing keeper punts a goal kick to your side of the field is still dumb, but I know there's a lot of drunken little pendejos who are going to go to these games and still do this dumb chant when you're down by 2 goals, and I'm going to loathe every second of it. I'm impressed you all made it here. A Gold Cup final appearance last year where Mexico had to score a goal late in order to beat you, then winning 6 out of 8 games in the CONCACAF Nations League to make it to the semifinals and qualify for this tournament deserves all the credit in the world. There's not really any individual stars that can take over a game at will, but collectively, you're a solid team that can surprise the hell out of people. You have an ambitious manager in Thomas Christensen. Adalberto Carrasquilla should ideally be able to build on the fantastic Gold Cup that he had, and as a team, you're putting together the building blocks to have a combination of both substance and style with the 3-4-3 that you play. Now, I know that the Copa América is very new to you, but I do have some good news. You won't be running into Mexico anytime soon during this competition unless you both get to the finals. I also do have to be the bearer of bad news, because you're in the group with Uruguay and the USA.
It was really tough, it was fun, I enjoyed it. It was definitely a different ballgame, but I had a blast, so thank you.
It's not going to be easy, but you did beat the Americans in the Gold Cup semifinal. So you could maybe escape the group stages with a draw against one of those two and then just beat an opponent of a similar level in Bolivia. But you're most likely running into either Brazil or Colombia if you do in the quarterfinals. I Just don't see a Copa America win happening for you all in any scenario. If there's a word to describe you as a national team coming into the Copa America, it's uncertainty. Because for many years, you had a pretty solid backline that was the heartbeat of your team, but nowadays, that's getting a little shaky. And part of that pains me because that means my captain, Gustavo Gomez, is getting older and his skill level is starting to deteriorate. And that's before we get into the fact that your national team can't find anyone to score goals.
So we don't have the capacity.
Your team may have won the U23 South American pre-Olympic tournament and have some players coming through that pipeline to your senior team, but that's the only silver lining for the future. Because your current manager is a temperamental mess who's unable to get the best out of Julio Enciso, Ramon Sosa, and Miguel Almiron, and will probably spend more time fighting the media over it instead of actually improving his tactics and players to compete at this level. The only reason you're not getting fourth in your group is because Costa Rica is there, and you have more talented players to at least manage to win or draw that game. That's pretty much it. You're not touching Colombia or Brazil in your current form, so hang your head in the fact that at least you get an automatic invite to these tournaments. That loss in the World Cup qualifier against Australia and Andrew Redmayne dancing on your graves has fundamentally broken you. I knew just from looking at your form for Common Bowl qualifiers that you've been bad. I just didn't realize how bad. You have only picked up just 2 points in 6 World Cup qualifier matches, scoring just a single goal. You have 4 wins over the last 365 days, and 3 of those came against CONCACAF teams that are nowhere near the Copa América. You basically did what every middle-of-the-pack European team does to feel better about themselves by putting San Marino, Gibraltar, or Liechtenstein in their calendars, and then you just wailed on them to raise morale before this tournament. Unfortunately, you got drawn into a group featuring Argentina and Chile, who would have just beaten you lifeless in qualifiers if not for Pedro Galese fighting for his life. And really, even Canada's a better team than you right now. Even with your penchant for doing really well in this tournament, I'm just going to call it here. You're getting 4th in this group unless you somehow manage to basically figure out Jesse Marsh's whole system in the game against Canada, which, admittedly, is not that difficult. If you do, maybe you get 3rd. Either way, you're definitely not winning this thing. So, it's really nice of you all to host this tournament again like you all did in 2016, but let's be realistic. Do you all really expect to win this thing? Sure, the high-end talent is there. Christian Pulisic, Giovanni Reina, Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, Fuller and Balogun if he ever figures out how to hit the back of the net on a consistent basis. But overall, this is a young roster. Their youngest roster being sent into this competition since the 2007 Copa America edition, in fact. Yet, y'all still couldn't help yourselves but to cut Timothy Tillman and keep Shaq Moore. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Speaking of backward steps, let's talk about the elephant in the room, your manager.
As if we needed any more evil bald men in our lives.
Greg Berhalter has a team full of players mainly from the top 5 to 7 European leagues at his disposal. And yet, Greg has them playing in a system and tactics which could only win 38% of matches during his stint in the MLS as a head coach. So, there's a certain level of irony here when he's rambling about how the players are the problem after getting thrashed 5-1 by Colombia in preparation for this tournament. Really, all you need to do is take one good look at his record with the usmnt outside of CONCACAF to see just how out of his depth he is as a manager. Even if the USA's high-end talent decides to bail Greg out, you'll be lucky if you even make it past the group stages. And even if you do, you're running into either a Brazilian or Colombian buzzsaw in the quarterfinals and getting sent out of this competition with a whimper. Then again, maybe this is what you all deserve for letting Alexi Lalas have a platform to be American soccer's equivalent of Skip Bayless. Right now, you're in the honeymoon phase after consummating the marriage with one Marcelo Bielsa. It's hard not to be positive about it, especially given the recent results you all have had under him in the World Cup qualifying matches along with the friendlies to prepare for Copa América. Although I have to think part of why Bielsa likes this job so much is that for once in many years, he doesn't need to hire a translator.
Sorry, no speak English.
Between positive results such as beating Argentina and Brazil back-to-back, and trying to prove that the 2022 World Cup results were nothing more than a fluke, you are the dark horse of this entire tournament to take it all. Even more so with the plethora of talent you've got all over the pitch, such as Darwin Núñez, Nicolas de la Cruz, Federico Valverde, and of course, known Hannibal Lecter cosplayer enthusiast Luis Suarez. That said, you're the dark horse, not favorites. Because when you live by Bielsa ball, you perish by Bielsa ball. Since his stint in Chile, he's rarely been able to commit to a job for more than 5 years, and things tend to be disastrous on the way out of each one. So if you're Uruguay, you kinda sorta really want to try and win this one, but when the tactics are rather one-dimensional and Fernando Muslera isn't there to bail you all out on net when your defenders can't play their way out of pressure, it's going to cost you sooner or later. Zero doubts that you win your group, by the way, but I think the semifinals are the furthest you're going to go in this one. Fernando Batista is a manager who you're going to be a lot more familiar with after this tournament. The man's basically been a miracle worker for this Venezuelan side over the past few years, and one of the biggest reasons why they've done so well thus far in World Cup qualifiers. Kevin Andrade could be another breakout talent in this tournament if he's given a legitimate chance to do so, but this team's biggest strength is in its defense. Although there's not much else going on for this roster besides it. Outside of a 3-0 thrashing of Chile, you've only scored 1 goal at most during all matches throughout the past year. That lack of offensive firepower means that you could drag teams to the deep end with defensive performances in the latter stages of the tournament, but you do have to get past the group stages first. And when you consider that your national team only has 8 wins in 70 matches at the Copa América, you're not just trying to win games at a tournament, you're trying to reverse a history of sheer, utter mediocrity in the process. You're not going to win this tournament. You're not consistent enough to do it. But look, I think this is the generation that finally gets Venezuela to a World Cup for the first time ever, and also a team that will get you back to the quarterfinals of the tournament. Because while you may not be able to score that many goals, I don't think Mexico or Jamaica's offenses can break through your defense. Alright, that just about wraps it all up. You've made it to the end, congratulations. I should probably mention this video is meant to be in good fun, and most likely a couple of things within it will likely end up with me having egg on my face. Or if this goes anything like the similar style video I made on the Premier League last season, plenty of egg on my face. Anyways, it's back to the FN content on the next video, and due to putting this one up first, I'll make a longer one detailing all the stuff we are getting into with our União de Tomar save. So yeah, till next time.